Okay.
Boston, actually.
Okay. Cambridge. Okay.
So very good. So I'll put this away.
Okay. You can put it on if you're in Boston. It's cold now, So.
Oh well. It looks strange because you're not wearing it. I'm not wearing it. So that's good. So I'll address you as Dr. Ori Sassoon, Managing Director for Simulation Software and Technology.
That's fine.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
So very easy. I'll introduce you first at the camera, and I'll turn to you, and then you just talk to me.
No worries. Nothing. No issue.
Okay. Hi, welcome to the National Careers Choice online news. And sorry, let me erase one more time. Hi, welcome to the National Careers Choice online news, and I'm Robin Steinberg. Welcome to my show again. And today we have a interesting individual who has successfully set up his company here in Singapore, which is known as the Simulation Software and Technology Private Limited. He's none other than Dr. Ori Sassoon. He's the managing director, and we're going to discuss more about updates on innovation and creativity, which was held here in Singapore on this subject matter, and a conference that was organized by the Singapore Management University as well as the American Association that specialize in creativity and innovation. Dr. Ori, thank you for joining me. It's been a real pleasure to see you, being a forward-looking individual who believes in innovation and creativity. Tell us more about what your company is set to do, and also why innovation is such a key element, importance in the 21st century.
Right. So in terms of the company, what we do, we develop software. So I think all software development has some innovation built into it because you need to build something from scratch. Okay, so in our case, what we do is software that analyzes large bodies of data. You have a lot of data, you want to find something in it, whether it's you're looking at police calls and you want to find links between them, or you're taking social media and you want to find some pattern in it. Okay, so all these things require a lot of innovation. From a larger perspective, I think the reason why innovation is important is because really it helps you to create value. So looking at the 21st century, how are we able to create new value, especially in a world where many of the menial tasks would probably be delegated to machines or to automated devices? How do you actually create something new that goes to the next level? So I think that's why.
Now, for the next generation, do you believe that everybody has to be encouraged to move towards knowledge-based innovation?
Yeah, so I believe, first of all, the difficulty, if you compare to previous generation to current generation, I think the key thing is you're no longer able to acquire a skill and use it for 20 years or 50 years and retire, because whatever you would learn today, let's say in the university or in school, probably would be obsolete within, I'm not sure within 1 year or 10 years, but definitely it will be obsolete because the specific skill you learn will not be relevant as it is. So you'll have to be upgraded or learn a new skill. So in some way, on one hand, in terms of learning itself, probably what you need to do is learn how to learn on your own rather than just learn a particular thing and stick to it, right? So let's say, for example, you talk about conducting this interview, right? If you would say, I'm a journalist trained 20 years ago, you'll not be considering doing something which you're taking the video yourself, right? I mean, so this is something that, because technology has evolved, the world has evolved, there's some changes. Now, a person is actually able to take the video on his own while he's doing the interview, right? Let's say 20 years ago, you need to have a crew with a camera this size, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think these changes are a product of innovation, but they also show why you need innovation, because you need to come up with new ideas how to do things, how to achieve outcomes, because the old ways obviously will become obsolete because of other structural or technological changes.
Now, you spoke about adding value and new value for customers around the globe.
Right.
And now, for yourself, one of my key questions for our readers is what actually inspired you to keep yourself learning, innovating, and also able to captivate your customers what was your inspiration behind your founding of simulation software and technology?
Okay, so I think that's a combination of two things. One is just opportunity. I mean, I mean, you have to do something, and you're able to do one thing, so you're going to do it. I think beyond that, I think creating value is very important, and in the sense that that also is the reason that drives you to do things. I mean, even when you look, just not at myself, just look at any employee in the company or whatever, and you ask them why. Why do you want to do your job? So I think on one level people can tell you, look, I want to have salary, that's why I want to do it. But I think if you don't have anything where you actually create something, you can take pride in what you did, I think it is very difficult to motivate people. So to me, I think my inspiration on one level is, of course, I need to make a living, I have children, okay, so that's maybe one level. But I think beyond that is really the ability to create things and the pride of seeing a system that you have created being used by people for some purpose. Let's say, is it law enforcement, for training people, for commercial purposes, whatever the purpose is, you see people using something you created from scratch. I think there's a lot of pride in the ownership of that. Even maybe you don't really own it, somebody else bought it from you, but still you have this pride that you created something which is useful to somebody. I think that's something very important.
Was there a moment in life along your professional experience where you found meaning in your innovation? Was there any one defining moment which it caused you to realize that this is the job that you have to do, and this is the job that you want to be in for the rest of your life? Was there one?
I'm not sure I really had this kind. I mean, that's too simplistic, I guess. But I think also because I started doing work relatively young, so I probably did not have that. I think when you're young, I mean, maybe it's more difficult to have this kind of aha moments. I think, I'm not sure. So I didn't really have that kind of thing. But it's basically, I think it's also a journey. I think you need to find what are the things you like to do, what are the things you don't like to do, and develop through that. And I think to me it's more of a journey rather than one singular point that changes everything. I mean, but again, I guess different people have different things.
Now, leadership in innovation, such as yourself, Dr. Ori, what are the key lessons can aspiring entrepreneurship can learn from you? Do you have any three key lessons that you probably could impart?
Okay, so that's a bit challenging, especially because I didn't prepare anything. Okay, but no, but okay, that's okay. So I think what I would think is basically my own view. It might be different than what you read in a textbook, I guess. But so I think what I would think is that on one hand, to try to, when you innovate something or create something, really focus on who's going to use it and why. Rather than just say, okay, I want to create something new, very different than everybody else. People tell you differentiate, create something totally new, don't copy from other people. But at the end, how do you actually bring it back and make it related to an outcome that somebody needs? If nobody needs it, then why do you want to do it? So I think focus on your customer in a way. Go to and related to that, the second point is really do something in a field that you know very well. Okay, the reason is that if you do something in a field you do not know, then how can you actually ascertain that what you're doing is really new? Let's say I come into a field, I don't know anything about it, and say, look, I have this great idea, I want to do this, but actually other people already done it, I just don't know about it, right? So I think the second key point to me is really know your stuff, come to a place you know very well. In some ways it could be useful, for example, to go into this industry, work for 5 years, and then go and become an entrepreneur, rather than first become an entrepreneur and then try to learn the industry. I think that is something that is quite obvious from a common sense perspective. I think the third thing, and I think that's quite, I mean, people talk about it a lot, obviously, is you have to have some sort of a never give up attitude, because I think the difficulty when you do new things, when you do entrepreneurship in general, so you really have to rely on yourself both for financial or other forms of difficulties that you might face. So really you have to have this kind of belief in yourself and what you're doing in order not to give up. And again, so I think the first 2 points I mentioned is, if you really know your stuff and you're doing something that you know somebody needs, then it's easier for you not to give up. If you do something that you don't really know why you're doing it, then very fast you're gonna, it's gonna be very quick. not very quick, but it will be difficult for you to stick to it long term, in the face of adversity, right? Which probably will happen. When you have a small company, probably, if you're lucky, maybe it's once in 2 years. If you're not lucky, maybe it's every month. You have like a life-threatening crisis that you need to handle. So if you cannot really have this kind of sense of certainty that what you're doing is going to work at the end, you won't be able to reach the end. So.
And speaking about the end, what were the challenges when you first started out simulation software and technology? Dr. Ori, what were the challenges that you faced when you first started, and how did you overcome those challenges?
So I think the challenge I faced is probably the same as any other business. It's really how do you find your customers? How do you keep your customers? How do you hire more people? When you start out, I started out as just me. So how do you hire additional people, and so on? So I think in that way. So specifically for me, I actually had a company in Israel before I came here, so I had some, at least, idea of what I want to do and how I want to do it. But still, it's a learning journey, So even after 10 years, you still learn something new every day, So it's not so easy.
Is there any particular technology magazines that you read often on the
Well,
internet?
actually, I think reading is today something very difficult in the sense that you have an overload of things you can access. Even if you just say, okay, let's go to one of these websites, let's say TechCrunch or whatever, and you say, I want to read everything that they give you in an RSS feed. I think you're not able to do it because it's too much. At the same time, you have access to not only content on the internet, but let's say books on things like Kindle or ebook readers of other sorts. So I think in a way, what I personally try to do is somehow to control what are the things I'm reading and to have a good mix of technology, which is something I do, but also other types of information about, maybe geopolitical or economic topics, or even just understanding of human behavior, psychology. So to have a well-rounded set of things. So actually, I don't really have a particular publication that I would follow all the time. Of course, I also like to read like these things like T3 or whatever to see like new gadgets, that maybe I can buy later. But I don't really have a fixed thing that I would read all the time. So yeah.
Now, what is your criteria and philosophy in innovation, and at the same time choosing your customers?
Okay, so in that respect, actually, maybe it's not very traditional. So in my mind, when you look, so this is not so much related to innovation, but actually to business. Okay, so my view of business is this: if you have a company, it either grows or dies. You're not able to have a steady state. Let's say you have a company and you have 3 customers, and you're the best. They really love you and all that. But you just say, okay, why don't I stick to this? I don't do anything else. What will happen is somehow there will be a change. Either other people are able to do the same thing, or your customer needs something else or something additional and you don't provide it, then suddenly looks for other vendors and so on. So how does that relate to your question? So the point is that to me, when you look at business, I would think that it's better to grow any way you can just to achieve this momentum of growth. The moment you're growing, you're hiring more people, you have more revenue, even if the things you're doing is not exactly what you set out to do or what is like your dream to do, it will give you more opportunity later to go back to your dream. So I know traditionally people tell you, hey, why don't you focus on one thing, you'll be good at that, and so on. I always find it's better if you have an opportunity, you can sell something for $10 and make $2, and it doesn't take a lot of time. Why not you just do it anyway? I think what I find the benefit of this is really that it allows you also to get to have more customers, and later you can sell these customers the kind of stuff that or maybe you have more customers, them, then you can create new innovative solutions and give them. But I think the starting point of everything, of any opportunity, would be to get to know these people, ideally to supply something to them. So I always find that, in terms of finding the customer, it's better find customer for anything, find anything that they need and get to work with him. And then once you know them, you know what they need, you can actually look and think, what can I do that will create value to them in a way that nobody else is able to do, okay? Or another way, which of course is a bit inferior in the way people look at it, maybe I can do something for them which is much more efficient, much cheaper or whatever. But that's like viewed as a secondary thing because you're doing the same like other people, but just a bit cheaper. I think the more interesting thing is really do something that nobody else is able to do, and fitting to their need. I think that to me is the more interesting thing.
Very well said and very wise saying as well, Dr. Ori. What advice would you give lastly on this note? Is there a quote that your parents have passed on to you that you live by every day?
Wow.
That inspired you? Or maybe a teaching or some sort? Because I'm sure because I believe everyone says to me that they always live by one quote or one memory that they carry them.
Okay, so unfortunately I don't know either. My memory is not so good. Okay, but I think because if I'll go back, I think one of the things my parents tried to teach me is a lot of things. It's not one thing.
But what would be the most precious?
But if I think the one thing really is that, which relating to this topic of somehow relating to work, is probably that you need to work hard. I mean, even when you, because when you talk about innovation and technological breakthrough or whatever, you always have this vision of, somebody had this aha moment, he had this light bulb light up, he got this idea, and then he sell it for $100 million to somebody else. But I think what you find is that all these success stories that you would read about, they end after actually a lot of hard work and mastering something. Okay, it's a bit like this book by Malcolm Gladwell, right? The Outliers, right? I don't know if you read it, but he talks about a lot about this thing about 10,000 hours of doing something. So let's say he talks about Bill Gates, and then Bill Gates is not that he had this singular thing that one day he just became successful. He actually spent 10,000 hours in apprenticeship of other people or learning about technology and software before he actually came into Microsoft. So I think in the same way, you have to really build a foundation of knowledge. It relates to the second point we discussed earlier, knowing your stuff. So you need to have spent a lot of time, a lot of work to get to know what you're trying to do and the foundation of your knowledge. And then the other thing is that you need to keep on working very hard. For example, I thought, when I started out, so I had one person in my company, let's say I had 10 people. Okay, so I thought, look, if I'm going to have 50 people, life is going to be much easier. Why? Because you have a big company, maybe you have more money, I don't know. But what you find is that as things grow, you actually have more problems in a way, that you need to solve or more difficulties to. So maybe it's higher quality problems, but still, it means that you still need to somehow even work harder to continue in this journey. So I think to me, the bottom line, even though it's probably very much of a cliche, and people maybe wouldn't like it, but I think really the idea of needing to work hard and to stick to a certain path in order to achieve outcomes, I think that would be the thing. And my father, even though he's like 66 years old now, and he's a professor in the university doing a lot of research and all that. He's still, working very hard and so on. So that since you asked me about my parents, that would be my okay. So sorry, it's a very long answer for a short question.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very fruitful. But now, in regards to innovation and creativity,
Right.
How important is trademark and patent to you? Do you do that for your clients most of the time, or do they do that?
So I think intellectual property on one hand is important, right? But I think maybe because what we do is not in that kind of scale, maybe we don't really emphasize that much. So what we do have, of course, any deal we have, there's some legal framework of intellectual property, but I don't think we go to the extent of registering patents. I think the way the world is going today, and especially now, recently this landmark suit by Apple against Samsung shows both the strength and the weakness of this thing. The strength is, wow, you're able to get the verdict to give you $1 billion, right? So that's a lot of money. The weakness is that, for example, the models that they're able to ban from the stores is all the old models, like Samsung S2, Galaxy S2, and all that, because the lawsuit took 1 year to go through the courts. So I think in a way, depending on what is the intellectual property you have and how widely used it can be. If it's something that you can sell to 1 million people, then obviously you need to register a patent. But I think the reality is that this thing is much more complex because of the issue of enforcement across different jurisdictions. Again, the Apple versus Samsung thing shows you this thing in a very obvious way, they're able to secure a win in the US, but they lose in Korea or in other jurisdictions, right? So what that means is that the best form of protection is actually that whatever you do, there's a part of it that only you understand or only you keep to yourself. If everything is totally open, it's very difficult to prevent imitations. And then if the other side will get a good lawyer, maybe they'll find a way to find a loophole in your patent. So the question is also, what did you patent? You cannot really patent anything. By the way, again, this lawsuit, one of the things that is striking is that apparently the US courts, and again, I'm not really a lawyer, so I'm not really understand this, but apparently it's a patent which is not really, it's about, more about the appearance of things and the method of doing things, and in a way that is not the traditional way of patents. It's more about the look and feel of the iPhone and so on. So, so I think to summarize, depending on I think my advice actually to this is to get legal advice. In some cases, it's worth it because these things cost a lot of money, patents and all that. So, in some cases, it's worth the investment. In other cases, it's a bit of a overkill because you can protect yourself in other ways. Okay, so that would be my bottom line. Okay, I'm not sure I'm the qualified person to answer that.
No, not to worry, Dr. Ori. But before we let you go, what do you see in the next 5 years? Do you foresee, as technology progress and innovation and creativity has become more mature, especially in Southeast Asia and Asia alone, do you see that the importance for people to obtain a good education so that they could remain employed in the area of innovation and technology?
So I think the next 5 years, there are a lot of challenges. You see, if you just read the newspaper about economic crisis in Europe and all that. So I think it's very difficult to project a direct relationship between schooling and employment. Because I think the U.S. is a case in point. Today, you see a lot of people who are disillusioned from this idea that I'm going to go and get a degree and then I get a job. They realize that they take a student loan, they go to school, they graduate from school, and then there's no job because of the unemployment situation. Or maybe they can get a job, but it's like a $7 an hour job that they could have got without the degree. So coming to Asia, I think in Asia the situation is a bit different. I think the state of innovation, technological innovation has not reached the maturity of the West. So actually there's a lot of room for growth. So I believe that probably in the next 5 years there might be a setback because of economic backlash from Europe or the US, but on a bit longer time frame, maybe 10 years, definitely there's going to be, I think, a lot of development, and I would expect that things that today are exclusively done in the West, for example, the forefront of technological innovation, you can still make the case that all of this is done in Silicon Valley in the US. Mm-hmm. I think this will be less concentrated. Okay, not to say that Silicon Valley will lose its shine, but I think you'll have less concentration of everything being done there and more towards areas like Asia because of the development in Asia, as well as the point I mentioned before, being closer to the customer. If you know what people want in Asia, and now suddenly a larger proportion of your users, your customers are in Asia, maybe it ultimately it will somehow give, and you'll have more of the innovation happening in Asia as well. Okay, so that will be.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ori Sassoon, for your remarks and comments
Thanks.
on the future of innovation and creativity. And thank you for joining me here at the National Critics' Choice Online News. I'm Robin Steinberg. Have a great week ahead, and don't forget to look out for more news on our YouTube channel, the National Critics' Choice Online News Talk Show, or visit our website at www.nationalcriticschoice.com. And once again, thank you for watching. I'm Robin Steinberg.
Excellent. Thank you, Robin. Okay, I hope it's going to work well. Okay, later you need to teach me what is the business model here. If you put something on YouTube,